Hi, welcome to my video on basic rules of factoring polynomials. This is the first video on the unit on rational expressions. And rational expressions are fractions which are going to be added, subtracted, multiplied, and divided. So let's review the basic rules of factoring polynomials, because rational expressions are made up of polynomials. Assume the polynomials is factorable. Rule 1. Remove the GCF if there is one. An example, factor each. I see a 5. 5 is common, so I take the 5 out. So 5 into 5x is x. 5 into 10 goes 2. So it's factored. Factored means expresses the product. B, I see an x in each term. I don't see a number because that's a 1. So I take out the x. I take out, that's a 2, and that's a 1. I take the smallest exponent. So x squared divided by x is x. Negative 9x divided by x is negative 9. And in C, I see 6 and 15. 6 and 15 have 3 as a common factor. I see x squared and 1x, so I see an x as a common factor. So 3x is the greatest common factor of 6x squared plus 15x. 6x squared divided by 3x is 2x. And 15x divided by 3x is 5. And again, notice there's 2 terms here, so there has to be 2 inside. There's 2 terms here, so there has to be 2 terms on the inside. And there's 2 here, so it has to be 2 on the inside, because 3x times 2x is 6x squared. 3x times 5 is 15x. And practice means pause the video and see if you can factor these 3. When you get them done, press play and see if you're right. 6 is a GCF, take it out. 6x divided by 6 is x. 18 divided by 6 is the negative 3. And I see a 10 and a 15, 5 is a common factor, and x is a common factor. 10x squared divided by 5x is 2x. 15x divided by 5x is 3. And I see no number is common, because that's a 3 and a 1. I see an x is common. Smallest exponent is 2, so x squared is common to both terms. So 3x cubed divided by x squared is 3x. And x squared divided by x squared is a 1, and there's a negative there. Notice there's 2 terms, so I have to have 2 in here. Rule 2. If there is no GCF, then the factoring will have the product of 2 brackets. 2 of these brackets, 1 bracket, second bracket. Remember I said the polynomial is factorable, so if you can factor it and there's no GCF, then you're going to have to use 2 brackets. Each below has no GCF. Notice there's no GCF here. No x, no number. So it has to have 2 brackets. And how do you get an x squared? Well, an x squared is x times x. How do you get a 4? Well, a 4 that's the product of 4 times 1 and 2 times 2. But the product is negative, so that's a plus and a minus when you multiply. Notice there's no x in the middle, so the sum is 0. So that's 2 and 2. Notice you have an x being squared and you have a 2 being squared. We call it a difference of 2 squares. When you have the difference of x being squared and 2 being squared, you go x plus 2 plus minus. And B, we have a bracket. Notice this is true because there's a 1 here. And what happens when we do the trinomial, the product is negative 15. Product is at the end, and the sum is in the middle, so the sum S is plus 2. So what are the factors of 15? 1 times 15, 5 times 3. And which pair of factors give you a 2? So the pair of multiply to give you negative 15, add to give you 2. 15 and 1 can't do it, so it's 5 times 3. But because the product is negative, that means one of these numbers is negative and the other one is positive. Because the sum is a plus 2, So that means you got a plus 5 and a minus 3. Multiply these two. Negative 15, add 2. So x squared is made up of x and x. And we got a plus 5 and a minus 3. So if we did the FOIL on this, you would get that trinomial up there. And C, again, there's no GCF and it's factorable, so we have a double set of brackets. X squared is made up of x and x. And again, the product is at the end. When there's a 1 here, that's the product. The product is 8, and the sum is negative 6. Factors of 8 are 1 times 8, 2 times 4. Which pair of factors will give you a 6? Well, 8 and 1 won't give you 6, so it's a 2 times 4 are the factors. But the product is positive, and the sum is negative. So when you multiply to get a positive, you must have 2 pluses or 2 minuses. So since the sum is negative, it must be negative 2, negative 4. So negative 2, negative 4. Multiply these two. 8. Add these two. Negative 6. Because that's the sum and that's the product when you have a 1. And right here we have, notice right here there's a 1. Right here there's a 1. Right here there's a 1. But this got a 2. And there's no GCF. Now we got to do a little bit more work. What happens? The product, now, remember the product is the 1 times the 8. But when there's a 1 there, you can automatically say that's the product. But when there's a 2 here, that's not a GCF. We got to go, the product is 2 times 3. 2 times 3. You got to multiply these two to get 6. And the sum is still 7, which is in the middle. So, what are the factors of 6? 6 times 1, 2 times 3. So, we have to pick a pair of factors that will multiply to give me 6 and add to give me 7. So, 2 and 3 will not do it, 6 and 1. So, we take the 6, put an x with it. We take the 1 and put an x with it along with the 3. Notice these two numbers, 6 and 1, go here. When you add these two, you get 7x. And when you multiply these two, you get the same. So if you multiply these two here, even though I didn't put the coefficient, the literal coefficient in, the product of these two is a 6x squared. So that the product of these two is a 6x squared. So that if we do that, we underline these two. I see a 2x common. So I'll take the 2x out to get an x plus 3. And I take a plus 1 out. I get an x plus 3. And you notice that x plus 3 is common. It's a binomial GCF in this case. And if you take the x plus 3 away, you get a 2x. If you take the x plus 3 away here, you get a plus 1. So when there's a 2 in front that is not a GCF, we have to go with this style of still product sum. But we have to split this term into these two factors and do what we call grouping. Practice. So try these 4 and see how you do. When you get them done, press play. Do one at a time, then press play. So here we go. X squared, no GCF. So we got double brackets. X squared is x and x. Notice the product is on the end. Remember, that's a 1. So that's automatically the product, negative 16. Sum is in the middle. Sum is 6. So the factors of 16 are 1 times 16, 2 times 8, and 4 times 4. So which pair of factors is going to give me a 6? 1 and 16 will never give me a 6. 4 and 4 will never give me a 6. So the factors are 2 times 8. But because the product is negative, that means the signs are going to be a positive and a negative. Because multiply, you get a negative. Now, I have to have a plus 6. So that means I'm going to have a negative 2 and a plus 8. Multiply, negative 16. Add 6. So I have a negative 2 and a positive 8. It makes no difference if you go x minus 2 and x plus 8, the order. As long as you got x plus 8 and x minus 2. Number 2, notice I have no middle term. So I have what you call this is x squared minus 7 squared. And that be the case, then I have, that's the difference of two squares. So there's an x and an x, a 7 and a 7 with a plus and a minus. The difference of two squares have the same terms except plus minus. Multiply that by FOIL and you'll find that notice there's no x in the middle because it's 0. So they add up. The product is negative 49 and the sum is 0. So notice there's no x. So that means there's a 0x. 0x is understood to be here. So that means the product is negative 49 and the sum is 0. 0x, understood. So add, you get 0. Multiply, you get 49. Number 3, we got to factor these, but we can't do it right away because we have no GCF. We got a 5. Because we got a 5, the product is 5 times negative 3, negative 15. The sum is negative 2. So, remember, because that's a 5, not GCF, I have to multiply these two. So that's really a negative 15x squared if I multiply, but I'm looking at the numerical coefficients. So 15 is 1 times 15, 5 times 3. Which pair of factors will give me a 2? 15 and 1 won't give me a 2. So the factors are 5 times 3. So put down these two. Now, to multiply to give me a negative 15 and add to give me a negative 2 must be a negative 5 and a plus 3. Why? The product is negative. One of these got to be plus and one got to be a minus. But when you add, it got to be a negative 2. So multiply, negative 15. Add, negative 2. So it's going to be a negative 5x plus 3x. So those two factors go in the middle. So when you add those, you get a negative 2x. And underline them to keep them separate like this. So what's in the first two? 5x. 5x squared divided by 5x is x. Negative 5x divided by 5x is negative 1. There's a plus here, so whatever that sign is, that's what this one will be. And 3 is a GCF. So positive 3 into 3x is x. Positive 3 into negative 3 is a negative 1. Notice the two of these are the same. So we take x minus 1. We take x minus 1 out of this expression here, we get 5x. If we take x minus 1 out of this expression here, we get a plus 3. And it's factored. If you multiply this back by FOIL, you'll get that trinomial there. And we have a 1. When there's a 1, remember 1 times negative 21 is negative 21. The sum is a plus 4. Okay, factors of 21 are 1 times 21 and 3 times 7, no more. So which factors are going to give me a 4? 1 and 21 will never give me a 4, so it's 3 times 7 are the factors. But because the product is negative, one of these is going to be plus and one is going to be a minus. So which one is the larger one is going to have a plus? Why? Because when you add these two, you should get the sum is positive. So negative 3 plus 7 is a plus 4. If I had positive 3, negative 7, then I would have negative 4. Again, notice the product is negative. You're guaranteed to have a plus and a minus. So, because there's a 1 right there, you go x and x. What are the factors? Negative 3 plus 7. Multiply. Negative 3 and 7, negative 21. Add, plus 4. And if you did the FOIL on, you would see that it comes out to give you that trinomial. So this is just reviewing the factoring, which is extremely, extremely important in this unit. Some polynomials have a GCF and a double bracket. So that's a combination of rules 1 and 2. So notice, factor each completely. So there's a 7 is a GCF. So when you take your 7 out, 7x squared divided by 7 is x squared. 7 divided by 7 is 1. Now, even though the 7 is out, you look at this binomial here, and this binomial looks like it's the difference of two squares. So that's an x being squared minus a 1 being squared. Difference. So that's an x and an x, a 1 and a 1. And I always go plus first, minus second on the difference of two squares. And there's a reason for that, because if anything is going to factor, it's going to be the minus one is going to factor further. And you'll see that in more complicated factoring. And I always look for the GCF first. The first rule in factoring is remove the GCF if there is one. Always look for the GCF first. So I see a 2, a 10, and an 8. There's no x common, but I do see a 2. 2 is the smallest number. So if 2 is not in 10, then 2 is not a GCF. So 2 is the GCF. So 2x squared divided by 2 is x squared. 10x divided by 2 is 5x. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And the factors of 4 to give you 5. Oh, 4 and 1. So it's possible that this will go further. So you shouldn't write this down. You should write this down on a sheet of scrap paper, like somewhere else. And if it works, so if I put this on a sheet of scrap paper and I try it, then don't write this down thinking it's going to work. Put it on a sheet of scrap paper, and if it works, then write it out like this. So x squared is x and x. The factors of 4 to give you 5 are 4 and 1. 2 and 2 won't do it. And because the product is positive, I'm going to have 2 up the middle of signs. So I'm going to have 2 pluses. Why? Because the product is positive and the sum is positive, so it's going to be 2 positives. If the product is positive, you have 2 pluses or 2 minuses. So it's going to be 2 of whatever that middle sign is. And so, since it works, now you can write down 2, x plus 4, x plus 1. So, again, factor it on a sheet of scrap paper, and then if it works, then put 2 times these brackets. Because this might not factor further when you're doing this chapter. It might, and it might not. C. I see a 3, smallest number. But I don't see 3 and an 8, so 3 can't come out. But x cubed, x squared, and an x, but x is the GCF. So I take an x out, so it's 3x squared minus 8x minus 3. So I divided x into each one of them, and I get 3x squared minus 8x minus 3. Now this might factor further, so again, it will happen here, but you try this on a sheet of scrap paper. So here we go. The product is 3 times 3. Remember, there's a 3 here. That's not a GCF, so you got to go 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. The sum is negative 8. So the factors of 9 are 1 and 9, 3 and 3. What factors of 9 will give you an 8, 3 and 3, 1? So this has to be a 1 times a 9. But the product is negative and the sum is negative, so there's got to be a plus and a minus, but the larger number is a minus, so that's a plus 1 minus 9. So we put down the x, spread this out, we go 3x, negative 3. Again, because that's not a GCF, we have to go with the product and the sum and work it out. So these two factors that we found out now got to go in the middle as plus 1x minus 9x. So these factors will multiply to give you negative 9, add to give you negative 8. So they go in the middle with an x, because when you add these, you get a negative 8. Now we got to do the grouping. So we go 2 and 2. So x comes out of the first 2, so we get a 3x plus 1. And notice, that's a negative there. So whatever that sign is there, that's what goes there. So 9 and 3 got a 3 common. So I'm going to take out the negative. Because that's negative, that'll be a negative there. So negative 9x divided by negative 3 is 3x. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is a plus 1. Again, how do you know? Because this one this binomial is the same as this. So I got an x, and I'm going to do the two brackets on this right here. So 3x plus 1 is coming out because it's in both. So we take it out of this, we get an x. We take 3x plus 1 out of this expression, we get a minus 3. So be careful with the factoring. This is probably the heaviest you're going to get in this chapter, unless you're doing sum of difference of cubes. But we'll wait and ask your teacher. Now, what's common here? I don't see an x, but I see a 5. Oh, 5 is a GCF. That's in 20 and 45. So 20 divided by 5 is going to give you the 4x squared. 45 divided by 5 is going to give you a negative 9. And notice we have a quadratic. And notice we have a 4x squared minus 9. So that's a 2x being squared and a 3 being. So that's the difference of two squares. So that means I have the same terms, 2x and 2x. I have a 3 and a 3. And because the product is negative, I'm going to have a plus and a minus. Again, note there's no middle term, 0x. So check it out. If you multiply those by 5, you'll get that. If you multiply 5 by that binomial, you get that binomial there. Practice. Here we go. Pause the video and work these out. So I see a 3 is the smallest number, but 3 is a factor of 60, so I'll take the 3 out. 3x squared divided by 3 is x squared. 3x divided by 3 is x. 60 divided by 3 is negative 20. And again, think about a sheet of scrap paper. The product is negative 20, and the sum is 1 plus 1. So the factors of 20 are 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 5 times 4. But which pair of factors is going to give you a 1? And 20 and 1? Nope. If you get 21 or 19, 2 and 10 gives you a 12 or an 8. So 5 and 4 are the factors. But the product is negative. So if the product is negative, the sign's got to be a plus and a minus. So I got a positive 5, negative 4, negative 5, positive 4. But since the sum is positive 1, I got a positive 5 and a negative 4. Check. Multiply. Negative 20. Add 1. So, because it's an x squared, we got an x and an x plus 5 minus 4. Because that's a 1, we don't have to go through writing all this down like this. We can just say, I got an x squared with a 1, we got an x and an x, and what's the factors that will multiply to give you negative 20 and add to give you 1? There they are, automatic. Number 2, GCF, 6 is here, and 6 8s, 6 9s are 54, so 6 is the GCF. Take the 6 out, 6x squared divided by 6 is x squared. 54 divided by 6 is negative 9. And what do I see? I see x squared and a 3 squared. So I see an x being squared minus a 3. So again, I see the difference of two squares. So 2 brackets. So that's x and x, 3 and 3, plus first and then the minus, the way I do it. Difference of two squares. Number 3, I see a zeros in every term, so I see a 10. There's a 10 in each one of these. So divide 10 into 20x squared gives you 2x squared. Divide 10 into negative 50x, negative 5x. Divide 10 into 20 and I get a plus 2. Okay, now I have 10 is going to go down. Because that's a 2, I have to multiply. The product is 2 times 2 is 4, and the sum is a minus 5. So what's the factors of 4? 1 times 4, 2 times 2. Which pair of factors is going to give you a 5? It has to be 1 times 4. But what do we notice? The sum is positive, and the product is positive, the sum is negative. So that means I got to have, if the product is positive, I got to have 2 pluses or 2 minuses. So I'm going to have two minuses because the sum is negative. So that means I have a 2x squared minus 1x minus 4x plus 2. Again, those two factors will multiply to give you positive 4 and add to give you negative 5. Those two factors go here with the x's. That leads us to, there's a 10. That leads us, spread this out, going with what we call removing. I got to remove the x from this one. So this is grouping here. So what's common in the first two x? So I get a 2x squared divided by x is 2x. Negative x divided by x is negative 1. I have a negative here, so that's a negative automatic. Common factor here is a 2. So negative 4x divided by negative 2 is 2x. And a positive 2 divided by negative 2 is a negative 1. And again, that one there, same as this, so I'm on the right track. So we write down the 10, and we go bracket, bracket. So 2x minus 1 is in both of these, so I take that out. And when I take 2x minus 1 away here, I get an x. When I take 2x minus 1 here, I get a negative 2. So what we're doing, we're taking the binomial GCF away from these two expressions. And again, this factoring is, there's a section on factoring, a unit, that a complete unit, complete review of factoring. It's factoring 1, which is up to up to factoring a trinomial that looks like this, and then factoring 2 has a trinomials that look like these, and sum and difference of squares and other factoring. But the factoring 2 is probably the second part of the factoring. And so if you did all that unit and then did this, it would be perfect. And number 4, I see a 2 here, so I have to take a 2 out, because 2 is in 14, 2 is in 20. I see 4x cubed x squared, I see an x squared. The smallest exponent is in the others. So I see 2x4 divided by 2x squared is x squared. Negative 14x cubed divided by 2x squared is a negative 7x. Negative 20 divided by 2 is negative 10. The x squared divided by x squared, I don't need any x's. So notice you got a x squared, you got x to the 1, and then you got x to the 0, which we don't write down. And notice this is a 1 here. So because there's a 1 here, if this is factorable, then you got an x and an x automatic. But the product is negative 10, and the sum is negative 7. So factors of 10 are 1 and 10, 2 and 5. So which pair of factors will give you 7? 2 and 5. So multiply. And guess what? The factors of 10, they will not work. This will not factor any further, because the product is negative. I got to have a plus and a minus, and with a plus and a minus, I can never add these to get. I cannot add these, so this cannot go any further. It looks like it, but I can't factor. So there's the final answer. So you got to, even though I took out the 2x squared, I cannot factor this one further, because the product is negative and the sum is negative 7. You got to have a plus and a minus on these to get the negative 10. And with a plus and a minus, so if I had negative 2 plus 5, or if I had 2 times negative 5, the product is negative 10. The product is negative 10, but the sum is 3 here, and the sum here is negative 3. So that can't factor any further. So just be careful. Just be careful. It's not factorable all the time. And rule 3 is what I call a rule, is remove the negative from the leading term. This keeps everything consistent with what our rules are. Take the negative out. So I see a negative, and there's a negative 1 coming out. So when I take the negative 1 out, I make plus and a minus. Negative divided into negative is positive. Positive divided by negative is a negative. And again here I see a negative. The leading term is a 3. And it's a negative. I see a negative and I also see a 3. So when I take out the negative 3x divided by negative 3 is x. Negative 12 divided by negative 3 is plus 4. So if there's a negative in the leading term, take it out. There's a negative in the leading term. Notice a descending order. So I take the negative out. There's a GCF called x, so I'm going to take a negative x out. So negative x squared divided by negative x is x. Negative 4x divided by negative x is plus 4. Notice when you take the negative out, the signs change. A plus, plus. This changes to a plus and a plus. This is a minus and a plus, becomes a plus and a minus. So notice the signs change when you remove the negative. I'm removing the negative here, so take the negative out. You're taking the negative 1. Negative divided by negative is positive. Positive divided by negative is negative. Positive divided by negative is a negative. And because I took the negative out, I got to be careful. The product is negative 7. The sum is negative 6. So the factors of 7 is 1 times 7. So if this is going to factor further, it has to be 2 brackets. But the product is negative and the sum is negative. It must be positive 1, negative 7. So that means because there's a 1, I go x and x, and I got a plus 1 minus 7. Multiply negative 7. Add negative 6. Because that's an x squared with a 1 coefficient, we're going to have an x and an x. So this is, take out the negative and the factors further. Be careful. There's a negative in the leading term, so take it out. Remember, we're dividing, that's a negative 1. And if you put a negative 1 there, which we normally don't do, a negative in the negative is positive. Positive divided by negative is a negative. Again, when you take a negative out, this becomes a positive and this becomes a negative. They change signs. Now we have a negative, and look, we have an x being squared minus a 6 being squared. So that's 2 brackets, x, x, 6, 6, plus, minus, because it's different to 2 squares. And f, I see a 2 here, 22 got a 2, 60 got a 2, and I see a negative, so I'll take the negative 2 out. Negative 2x squared divided by negative 2 is x squared. Negative 22x divided by negative 2 is a plus 11x. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 is a plus 30. And now we got a 1, so if this is factorable, then the product is 30. The sum is 11. Remember, that's a 1 there. So if this is factorable, it'll be double brackets here. But I'm going to pretend I'm on a sheet of scrap paper now. So the factors of 30 are 1 times 30. It's even, so it's 2 times 15. I see a 10, so it's a 10 times 3. And also, a 10 has a 5, so 5 is a factor of 30, so 5 times 6. So what factors of 30 will give you 11? No, no, no. 5 and 6 will give you 11. Multiply 30, add 11. And because there's a 1 here, that means you just have the 2 brackets. You don't have to do what we call grouping. So this is an x and an x, and the factors are 5 and 6, and it's a plus 5 and a plus 6. Why? Because the product is positive. Then you'll have 2 pluses or 2 minuses. You'll have 2 at the middle of signs. Because the product is positive, sum is positive, you'll have 2 pluses. And practice, you got 7 to do. Work these out. And as you do each one, pause your video or do them all and then press play back. I got to take a negative out because the leading negative x divided by negative is x. Negative 6 divided by negative is plus. Remember, that's a 1. Negative 1 times these will make them negative. When you take a negative out, the signs will change. I'm taking a negative 7 out. Negative 7x divided by negative 7 is x. plus 7 divided by negative 7 is negative 1. Notice, taking the negative out, that becomes positive and that becomes negative. And I have a negative in the leading term, and I have an x also. So, negative x squared divided by negative x is x. Negative 3x divided by negative x is plus 3. Again, taking the negative out, both signs change to plus plus. I have a negative in the leading term, so I'm going to take it out. So, negative into negative x squared is x squared. Positive 100 divided by negative is a negative 100. And notice we have x squared is x being squared and 10 being squared. So that's the difference of two squares. And when we get the difference of two squares, x squared minus 10 squared, then there's x and x, 10 and 10, with a plus and a minus, because the product is negative 100. And notice there's no x in the middle, so the sum of these two is 0. And I have a negative in the leading term, so take it out. And that gives me x squared minus 10x plus 14. So what I did, when I took the negative out, I just changed all the signs. Positive, negative, positive. And factors of 14 to give me a 10. 14 to give me a 10. So 1 times 14, 2 times 7. So the product is 14, and the sum is negative 10. So will 1 and 14 give me a 10? No. 2 and 7 give me a 10? No. So that's as far as you can go. You can't factor this any further, because the factors of 14 can never give you a 10, so you can't go any further. Number 6, I see a negative. Take it out. That makes that x squared plus 4x. Again, notice the negative makes this plus and this a plus. But this is the sum of two squares. We cannot factor the sum of two squares. Check. In factoring one unit, I explained this thoroughly. Because, notice, the product is 4, right on the end, and the sum is 0, because there's no x in the middle. So what two numbers can you multiply to give you 4 and add to give you 0? None. So you cannot factor the sum of two squares, even though that's an x squared plus 2 squared. That's the sum of two squares, cannot be factored any further. So that's the final answer. Be careful. You can factor the difference of two squares with a minus, but you cannot factor the sum of two squares. And here we have to take out, I see a negative, and I see 4 is the smallest number, but 4 is not in 18. So another factor of 4 is 2. 2 is in 18 and 20, so I'll take a negative 2. That gives me a 10x squared plus 9x plus 2. So I took a 2 out. Can this factor further? So now I got some work to do on this one. So let me put that down here and work it out. Let's see. The product is a 20. The sum is a 9. Because I can't take, I took a 2 out, but that's the highest number that can come out is a 2. So I got a 10. That can't go any further. So I have to go, product is 20, sum is 9. So the factors of 20 are 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. So what factors of 20 give you 9? 4 and 5. So there we go. Spread that out. Here's the 10x. Here's the plus 2. So I got a positive 4x plus 5x. Remember, multiply these two, you get 20. Add, you get a 9. So we have to group them. We worked this out by grouping. So it's a negative 2. Here's the big bracket. So I'm going to take out a negative 2 out of these two. Sorry, 2x. When I say negative 2 for it, 2x comes out. When I take 2x out of here, I get 10x squared divided by 2x is 5x. 4x divided by 2x is plus 2. And I see a positive, and this term is positive, and I see a 1. I put a 1 here. There's no other factor common, only 1. So 1 into 5x goes 5x. 2 divided by 1 is 2. And you know you're okay when this binomial here is the same as this one. So that's a 5x squared, that's common. So when I take a 5x squared out of this, I get a 2x. When I take a 5, when I get a 5 plus 2x out of here, I get a 2x. When I take a 5 plus 2x out of this expression, I get a plus 1. So that's fully factored. Notice this is the heavier factoring, the one with the 10 in front. It's not a GCF. Be careful. If you find yourself having trouble with that, then go back and look at more examples on factoring one to find a factor. It's very important to be able to factor, extremely important. And another rule that I obey is that I obey write a polynomial in descending order to do the factoring. If it's not in descending order, then your factoring will be very hard to do. So descending order is x squared plus 8x plus 7. And the product is 7. The sum is 8. 7 and 1 multiply. So I got a double bracket. I got an x and an x. Again, I can do double brackets because that's a 1. Because that's a 1, I can do the double brackets right away. Factors of product is 7. Sum is 8. 7 and 1. So it's a plus 7 plus 1. Multiply. 7. Add these two. 8. Because that's a 1, I can automatically do the double brackets without doing what we call grouping. And rearrange this one. I'm going to rearrange. When we rearrange them, we don't change the signs because we're not moving across an equal sign. So x squared goes first, 25 goes second. I take out the negative. So that gives me x squared minus 25. You're dividing each of these terms by negative 1 actually. And notice this is the difference of two squares because it's x squared minus 5 squared. So double bracket, I get an x and an x, 5 and a 5, plus minus. C, descending order, is x squared plus 6x minus 16. X squared, 1x, and then the constant. And the product is negative 16, and the sum is 6. So the factors of 16 is 1 times 16, 2 times 8, 4 times 4. Which pair is going to give me a 6? 16 and 1? No. 4 and 4. So it's 2 and 8. So 2 and 8. And the product is negative and the sum is positive. So I have to have a negative 2 and a positive 8. Because the product is negative, I'll have to have a plus and a minus. So because there's a 1x squared, I automatically can go x and x. And I got a negative 2 and a plus 8. Or I could go x plus 8, x minus 2. Multiply, negative 16. Add, plus 6. Perfect. Descending order for D. The x squared goes first, so it's 2x squared, then the x, and then the number. Notice we don't change the signs. And this is the one that there's no GCF. We got a 2 in front, so we got to go product is 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Sum is 3. And factors of 10 are 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. What factors of 10 gives you a 3 is a 2 and a 5. Notice the product is negative 10, so one of these got to be plus and one got to be a minus. So if the product is negative, I have to have a plus and a minus. But there's a minus 2 and a plus 5. Multiply, negative 10. Add 3. So 2x squared minus 2x plus 5x minus 5. Now I could have wrote down the 5 first and the negative 2 second. So if I wrote down plus 5x and a minus 2, it still works. It makes no difference. Grouping, you do 2 and 2. So I take a 2x out of the first two, GCF. So 2x squared divided by 2x is x, and negative 2x divided by 2x is negative 1. Take a plus out, whatever that sign is right there, that's what that is. And we got a 5 common. So 5x divided by 5 is x, negative 5x divided by 5 is negative 1. X minus 1 is common, and take it out. What's left? 2x in the first one. Take it out of here, and you get a plus 5. And we have some practicing to do. Practicing means pause your video if you are confident in your factoring and work these out. Do them one at a time. Here we go. Descending order. X squared minus 81. I regrouped them, but I didn't change the sign. That's the difference of two squares. So it's x and x. That's a 9 being squared, so it's 9 and 9. And the product is negative, so it's got to be plus and a minus. Remember, that's an x squared minus a 9 squared. That's the difference of two squares. XX, 9, 9 plus minus. Descending order, x squared first, then the x, and then the 12. And we don't change when we rearrange. And we got a product of 12, sum of negative 7. And what's the factors of 12? 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. Which factors are going to give me a 7? 12 and 1, no. 2 and 6, no. 3 and 4. If the product is positive and the sum is negative, it got to be two negatives. So there's a 1 here. So that means it's double bracket, x and x. And so I got a negative 3 and a negative 4. And I write all this down to explain where I'm getting it from. You can just do it right here. You can put an x and x and say, what's the factors of 12? If the product is positive and the sum is negative, it got to be two negatives. And then what's the factors of 12 to give you 7? 3 and 4. You don't have to go through all this, but it's a good way to do it. Descending order is negative 5x plus 7x plus 6. I didn't change the sign. Now I have to take out a negative because I don't want a negative in my first term. When I take the negative out, all the signs change. Now I got, this is the worst factoring you do because this 5 is not a GCF, and so here we go. I got a product. Is 5 times negative 6 is negative 30. The sum is negative 7. And what are the factors of 30? 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, and 5 times 6. But which pair will give me a 7? Add 31, subtract 29. Add 17, subtract 13. Add 13, subtract. This 3 and 10 will do it. But the product is negative, so one of these is negative and one is positive. So I got a positive 3 and a negative 10. Multiply, negative 30. Add, negative 7. So we have to split them. So we got a positive 3x minus 10x minus 6. These two factors go in here with an x. Add, perfect, negative 7. Now I got to do some work. What comes out of these two and out of these two? I see an x. 5x plus 3. Notice x is common, so I divided each term by x. I have a negative here, so I take a negative. Because that's a negative, that'll be a negative. If that was a positive right there, if that was a positive, this would be a positive. And I see a 10 and 6 got 2 as a GCF. Negative 10x divided by negative 2 is 5x. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 is a plus 3. And these two are the same, so I know I got it done right. So it's a negative, double brackets. Binomial is 5x plus 3. Take 5x plus 3 out of this, I get an x. Take 5x plus 3 out of this, and I get a negative 2. Done. And number 4, descending order is 3x squared minus 75. Notice I didn't change, I take a 3 out because it's a GCF. That gives me 3x squared divided by 3 is x squared. 75 divided by 3 is 25 and is negative. And we got the difference of two squares. at x squared minus 5 squared. So, double bracket, x and x, 5 and 5, plus minus the difference of two squares. So, that's a thorough review in the factoring. Hopefully, you understand or can factor, because not being able to factor means you are going to be behind in your math and not get things right in the quadratics and the polynomials and all sorts of math and calculus. And if you need more practice, don't forget to look up the unit on factoring 1 and the unit on factoring 2 to make sure you know what you're doing. If you like my video, click the like button, subscribe button, and notification bell. Visit my website, www.mathfullyexplained.com, to find more information about me, my videos, and the content that's on my YouTube channel called Math Fully Explained. Thank you for viewing my video. Bye-bye.